The Pottsville Maroons remain the only team in NFL history to win a championship and then have it taken away. In just their first season in the NFL, the Maroons were on the verge of winning the title. It came down to their final game on December 6th, 1925. The 9-2 Maroons were in Chicago to play the 9-1-1 Cardinals. It was dubbed the NFL Championship, but at this point there was no championship or playoff games. It was just whoever had the best record was declared league champion. The Maroons ended up winning 21-7, so in their first season they were NFL champs. But there was a strange rule which meant there were still 2 weeks left of the season. Games were officially scheduled till December 6th, but teams could schedule more games until December 20th, 2 weeks later. These postseason games, if you will, counted to your record, so not all teams actually played the same number of games. This was the very early days of the NFL and teams were struggling to survive. From 1920 to 1930, the NFL saw 44 franchises play at least one season, so this rule just meant they could generate more money to stay afloat. Even though there were 2 weeks left, the Maroons were being held as the 1925 champions. It seemed like it was their race to lose. The following week, they were set to play in an exhibition game against Notre Dame College All-Stars. This was at a time where college football was far more popular and seen as superior to pro football, so the game was expected to bring in a large crowd, and therefore a lot of ticket money, which was where most of the team's revenue was made. With that in mind, the Maroons thought their stadium wasn't big enough. They had a capacity of about 5,000, so they decided to play the game in Philadelphia. But the NFL actually had a rule against hosting games in another team's location. That was the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. It's interesting because it was the Yellow Jackets who organized this game. After beating the Maroons in their first matchup, they sat atop the Eastern Conference. They thought, we've got the number 1 seed in the bag, so they agreed to a matchup where the number 1 seed would face the Notre Dame All-Stars. However, after that game, the Yellow Jack season just unraveled, so it was now the Maroons' game to play. Still, the NFL warned the Maroons they would be fined and suspended if they played in Philadelphia. The Maroons would claim they got permission from Jerry Corcoran, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, who was then the acting commissioner of the NFL. The NFL denies that. Now this was so long ago the information is sparse. I have one source saying he was the acting commissioner, another source saying he was just a coach of another NFL team. I wasn't able to confirm that, but it is believable because he was described as Carr's right-hand man, and Carr was ill at the time. Regardless, there is documentation that shows Carr himself warned Pottsville 3 times not to play the game once he came back. At this point though, the Maroons already signed a contract to play the game. They argued the NFL couldn't legally enforce a breach of contract, so they decided to play the game. And it was a good decision because it gave the NFL a major boost in credibility. Again, this was at a time where college was seen as superior, and the Maroons pulled off a major upset with a last-second field goal, winning 9-7. But the victory was not anything to celebrate, at least for Pottsville, because they would get suspended, and that meant they had been kicked out the NFL for now. The decision to play in Philadelphia didn't even pay off. The game only drew a crowd of 10,000, even though the stadium had a capacity of well over 30,000. At this point, the Cardinals sat at a 9-2-1 record, half a game behind the Maroons. They quickly got 2 more games scheduled, but given these teams had a combined record of 1-8, the Cardinals won pretty easily. Pottsville supporters argue the Cardinals scheduled these games to inflate their record. Firstly, as I mentioned, teams scheduling games after the official season was standard practice. It also didn't even matter because technically the Maroons had been kicked out of the NFL, so the Cardinals were now the number 1 seed before these games. However, the Cardinals did do something wrong. One of the teams they were facing, the Milwaukee Badgers, had finished their season a few weeks prior, which meant they were a few players short of a complete roster. One of the Cardinals players, Art Foles, was asked to enlist some additional men for the Badgers. He recruited 4 high school players. Once the NFL caught wind of this, they banned Foles for life, fined the Cardinals owner, and forced the Badgers owner to sell the team within 90 days. But then the league backtracked. The fine and Foles' ban was ultimately waived. The game was also supposed to be removed from the records, but to this day it still counts. In defense of the Cardinals owner, Chris O'Brien refused to accept their title. He felt the team didn't earn it, but that just meant the 1925 championship was unclaimed. It wasn't until 1933, when the team was sold, that the new owner, Charles Bidwell, officially claimed the 1925 title. As for the Maroons, they didn't recover from this decision. They returned the following season, went 10-2, which got them 3rd place, but that would be the last taste of success. They went 5-8 in 1927 and 2-8 in 1928. Trying to save the team, the franchise would relocate to Boston and then become the Boston Bulldogs, but that lasted just a season before the team went defunct. Despite an attempt to get the Maroons recognized as the rightful champs, with an investigation actually being opened by the NFL in 1963, the Maroons' case was rejected. To this day, the Cardinals are listed as 1925 champions. But Pottsville didn't care. They felt, we are the rightful champions, so they created their own trophy made out of coal. Now, did the Maroons get screwed? I'm not actually sure. While they claim to have got verbal permission from the acting commissioner, when the actual commissioner came back, he warned them not to play, but they still ended up playing. There were also 2 weeks left of the season, so the standings weren't actually final. Still, it doesn't feel like the punishment fit the crime. They banned Pottsville for playing in another team's territory, but they let the Cardinals get away with scouting high school players to play for their opponent. I'd like to know your opinion though. Did the Maroons get robbed or were they in the wrong?